Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Control Alt event. And I'll unmute my very nice colleague Moraine to say hello as well.
Welcome,
Yeah,
everyone.
good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is Control Alt event episode 6 already, which is fascinating. Today we'll be talking about hybrid harmony, blending AV tech for mixed event formats. For mixed format events, technically speaking, was the official title. And we're live today. We'll have a special guest, but before that, today we'll be talking briefly, as briefly as possible. We try to stick to the half an hour, but usually go a little bit off board depending on the topic. Today we'll be talking about the evolution of AV technology across different event formats, specifically live, virtual, and hybrid. At least those are the three ones that we know. And as usual, today I'm joined by my lovely colleague, Moraine, who has been working on both sides of the blade, both with a few hundred event organizers and a few thousand event platforms. And he's the man if you want to talk to about integrations and anything about event tech. And I'll just pass the mic to him so he can do the intros and I can move things around and blur everything and ruin everything for the first 30 seconds.
Well, thank you so much for that kind introduction, Bogdan. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you all for joining. I see a lot of you here that frequently come back, so that's really good to see that. Please let us know where you're joining in from. And a small reminder, we are live, so make sure to ask all your questions. We have an amazing guest for you that can also answer those questions. So don't wait for all the way till the end to ask all the questions. Just drop them in the chat. We'll put them on the screen and we'll make sure they get answered. I'm here together with Bogdan, our famous data storyteller. He has a track record of crafting bespoke platforms, captivating data visualizations, and seamlessly integrating mirrored systems. He is the driving force behind Visual Hive. You may have heard of it, an AI marketing engine tailored for marketers and event professionals. And today, we actually have another guest. It is no one less than Brian Monahan. Brian is a seasoned event industry professional with over 20 years of experience and a key focus on producing, engaging live, hybrid, and virtual events. Currently, the Vice President of Sales and Business Development at Prestige AV and Creative Services, Brian has significantly contributed to the company's success by securing major contracts and navigating the challenging transition during the whole P word situation towards innovative virtual and hybrid event solutions. Beyond his corporate achievement, Brian is deeply committed to personal and professional development. He extends his passion for growth and learning as a facilitator for the PCMA Event Leadership Institute. You probably have heard of that one as well, where he shares his expertise in technical meetings and event production. Brian, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show. We're so glad to have you here. And also with this topic, hybrid harmony, I think it's definitely in your wheelhouse. So welcome.
Thanks, Moraine. Thanks, Bogdan. Super excited to be here. Honored to join you both. I look up to both of you in the industry, and I do have to come clean. It's actually 30 years in the industry now. I'm sorry. I guess I need to update my bio. I've been trying to hang on to that 20-year mark, but I think I'm over the hump now. So I know we're going to be talking about the history of AV, and I thought you guys might need to schedule more than a half hour based on that tenure. So I don't know what you were thinking.
We always schedule a little bit over half an hour, and I did forget, and I got panicked a little bit and excited, and forget to say that Brian is the founder of Event Mender, and again, I've been married for 10 years, so it's always my fault, and I do tend to make mistakes, not to use other words from that perspective. But yeah, you don't look a day over 25, and
thank you. Yeah,
exactly.
I do have that under 25 filter on my camera. So
I think many people would like to have that filter as well. So if you could, hey, Chris,
I just need to squash my video and lose 10 pounds too. So
well, yeah. Anyway, hi, Kristen. Good to see you joining in from New Jersey, all the way, all across the world. It's so good. Where everyone else joining in from? Let us know in the comments. And without further ado, let's jump into the first segment, the evolution of AV and event formats. You mentioned already a bit in terms of the vast amount of experience you have. Brian, can you give us a little bit of a historical overview? Not diving in too deep, but share us all your knowledge.
Yeah, how far do you want me to go back? Do you want me to go back to overhead projectors or film?
Yeah, so day one,
stuff?
30 years ago.
So yeah, I mean, I think since we're talking hybrid and a lot of virtual events, I think it's important to kind of like hit the distinction of where I was at when I started in the industry, and prior to me would have been like remote type and scenarios. Like there wasn't really a great option for doing any kind of hybrid or virtual event. Most likely 50s, maybe somebody was filming it and sending the canister to another city to be watched in the corporate offices, and maybe they're on a phone line together. So, that's kind of like I was catching the tail end of that. And then I think we went to a little peer-to-peer. That's broadcast satellites. We were hitting the satellite dishes and dropping those satellite trucks outside the ballrooms, and that was a viable solution. It was closer to real time. And then I think we hit that next phase, which was, we were starting to get into the digital world. We were hitting the ISDN lines, using our Polycom units, and still a closed kind of scenario. You had to be in the network. You had to be using all the right codecs and all the right protocols. They were very, very specific. And then we get to the pandemic, and great news is we were actually ready for it. Nobody was doing it. We had all this technology with webcams, GoToMeeting, Teams was coming on board, Zoom was rocking, but nobody was willing to slow down and actually master the technology until we absolutely got stuck in our houses for a year and a half or whatever that was. So it was always a dream we had. I just wish we could have done it under different terms. So
we have definitely benefited from a bit of a learning curve, especially the non-geeky persons who weren't building OBS on 3 different laptops and 5 different cables, trying to make everything work on a budget at some point with 2 days notice, preferably.
Yeah, I mean, I barely knew what OBS, to be quite honest, even being in the industry, since I'm more on, growing up on the AV side of things. We were very hardware based, so our team was always like, OBS, not a chance, give me that E2 switcher, I need a $180,000 switcher to be able to do what OBS does. I'm not going to do it.
It does make sense from a stress-free situation, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I do remember, I don't have 30 years in events, although I do have some great.
Are you trolling me now, Bogdan? Are you trolling me?
Just a little bit. No, I was just trying to remember how much fun I had about 25 years ago, 23 years ago, when I got into a TV transmission van. So we can do some kind of political thing, that because the technical guy who didn't turn up for the event, he was a cold, and I was the only one who was cheeky enough to say, I know how to do that, don't worry. It was 19 at that point. Did make some mistakes, but that was my first AV experience, technically speaking.
I mean, they started you out right at the top, jumped in with the broadcast.
But it was in terms of technological advancements, and we both have enough history. I've started shooting on film and started working on various beta cameras with cassettes and running through trains when you were doing a flood, because I was coming more from the journalistic part of view, but still an event, technically speaking. Something happened, something we're trying to stream. How do you see the advancement, and what, from your perspective, what did that enable you to do? Where did you find the value added from the technology perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things I like about the industry is, hey, the technology's been evolving over the past 30 years, just consistently, the Moore's law of doubling memory. And I think that's carried over into, video and internet and everything like that. So everything's been kind of on a double basis for the past 20, 25 years. But I think in the past 5 or 6, it's slowed down a touch. The technology, like in my space, like a 5,000 lumen projector, I don't need a 10,000 lumen projector in a breakout room. A 5,000 lumen projector is going to be good in 5 years. It's going to be good in 10 years. Whereas when I started in the industry, we were using 800 lumen projectors. And so, so when the 1200 lumen came out, you had to buy the 1200 lumen. And when the 15 and the 2000. And so I think that's the same with all the technologies we have. There's a lot of, I'm operating today on a Mac M1, MacBook Air 2020 model, and it destroys a couple PCs I have at the office that are brand new. This computer is going to be good for another 4 or 5 years with no issues. And in fact, it's better than some of the newer versions. So I think that having kind of like we're reaching a plateau, not that things aren't growing, but with a plateau, I think other people can catch up. The late adopters can now join in, and so they're going to go ahead and start testing things out. They're going to try things out. They're going to do their own shows, like we're doing right here. The barrier to entry is low now, and so that means everybody's doing it. And I think that allows us to even take it up a notch, to go even higher. And so that's what I'm excited about.
In terms of, like, we mentioned a lot of terms here.
And if stop me at any point, Maran.
Oh God, no, please! I really enjoy this.
We love it, and our audience probably loves it too. But sometimes there are some gaps, and I think especially with that lower boundary to enter the market and to get started with it, it becomes more and more important to kind of also know the foundation in terms of the terms that you need, so you can not just understand what you need, but also when you're working with, for instance, an AV provider, you can communicate exactly what it is that you need. And one of the things we put on the list is kind of, do you have a breakdown of the essential AV components that for live events in this case, such as a sound system, lighting, video projection? What are kind of, for you, what are the most essential AV components that everyone who's listening today should know about? Kind of, probably not too much in depth, but at least they know what they should have on their events.
No, and I'm going to break it down super simple. Actually, in the ELI course, I always try to break AV down into 3 categories, and I call it inputs, switching or combining, and then outputs or destinations. And so I always try to just tell people, get your mind set around these 3 main areas. So, essentially, you're in a room, you're going to need inputs. That's you're the person, you're the entertainment. You're going to have to be loud. They're going to have to hear you depending on the size. So you're going to have a good microphone, generally wireless. I don't get any orders for wired lavs anymore. Thank God. We said we didn't own any because we weren't going to let our clients use them anymore. We thought that was kind of crazy to put a lav on and then be chained to a cable. But no, you're going to need your microphones. You're going to need your audio input devices. Back in the day, that CD player, but now it's going to be a laptop playing music back. You're going to be playing illegally your Spotify list, most likely. You're going to be, breaking some laws there. Then you're going to have other input devices, your computers, which are playing back different audio. You're going to have videos in your PowerPoint. Most likely you're going to use, a lot of people have heard the term Playback Pro. That's a video playback device in a live event space. And so people will be playing back that video. So a big miss typically is they forget that those, it's PowerPoint and it's video based. They forget they need the audio. So you're going to need audio coming out of that. And then you're going to send it to a mixer. Okay. And so that mixer is going to take in all those inputs and allow you to match them up, get them all matched up and then push that back out to your speakers. Okay. And In a live space, it's pretty simple. You're going to have a couple speakers in the room, most likely for a small meeting. But we learned as we moved into the virtual space, you're going to want a higher end mixer in today's world. And I think that's kind of like where we talk about where you move into that space on the audio front is you need a mixer that's got different outputs. You want to be able to mix what's going to the stream at a different level than what you're sending to the room and possibly to the record deck. So it's gotten a little more complicated. On the video front, your inputs are going to be your cameras. I already talked about laptops. Those live on the audio and video side of things. Your not microphones, but PTZ cameras are really big in the virtual space right now. And I'll talk about that in some tips later on how those help events. What else did I miss on video? You got your Playback Pro, your video devices, any kind of video playback device. And then you're going to go into a switcher or a scaler. And it's a little bit different in the mixer. You're going to be picking, like, I want this input to go to screen. I want that input to go to screen. Today's modern world, you actually might be merging those inputs like we are here. We got 3 cameras up on the screen today. And then you're going to go to a destination, the final leg of the equation here, which is, in the room, it's to a screen. It's large screens in the room, but you got your downstage monitors. You want a switcher that can handle that. And now you're going to be sending out some independent feed, most likely to an encoder to send out to a stream somewhere on the web or inject into some kind of webcast. 2 other things real quick, and I'm not going to go into much detail on them, but you need, and vMix, Robert, absolutely. and I mentioned, I work for an audiovisual company, and the owner of our company really struggled when vMix solved our $100,000 switcher problem. So, it's kind of like a balance there.
It's a long list, but it's a long list that serves goals, because you went through the idea of, yes, we need this equipment because we need to have screens for speakers. We need to know where they are, and those screens for speakers might have the slides and the timer. They don't need to see themselves, or they might just need to hear themselves, depending on where you are. But in the same time, you want to send something out to your digital platform or whatever that is. And it's about, and how do you approach that conversation? Because from my perspective, it's very much a goal-based solution in terms of what do you want to achieve, communicate that in a correct way, and then somebody like yourself comes in and says, okay, I know all these words. I don't have to teach you for 6 months how to learn all these words, but I know how to do it correctly.
No, I think you hit on something, and I struggle even when we do the title of this session today is hybrid harmony. The word hybrid I don't disdain the word, but the word hybrid has got so many meanings. And so when people say, well, define hybrid, and I like to flip the script on that, and I say, define your event. Define what you're trying to achieve, as you said, Bogdan. That is the most important thing. The terminology, it's great if you can match it up, but I still recommend you ask a lot of questions. A lot of people don't know the difference between a live stream, a webcast, web conference, webinar. And so I think, although we have settled into some terminology in the industry, I still think we're on the front lines. And in layman's terms, a lot of people think a live stream is the same as a webcast.
So what's the difference between a live stream and a webcast, from your perspective, at least?
Well, yeah, and actually, I probably picked a poor choice of words. I could see where a live stream and a webcast may be similar, but I would say a web conference versus a live stream. I think live stream and webcast could be very similar, but generally a live stream is going to be mostly one way in terms of content. You may get a little kickback from like a chat type experience, but for the most part, the audio is all going one way, and you're not going to be talking to any of the audience.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely love the example, because it's so close, but it's so far away. Because we were talking about the idea of how do you look at AV from like an audience engagement strategy. And if somebody comes and says, I'm going to do live stream, I automatically going to presume, okay, that's the one way that you've just said. It might have like a Slido type of technology that will come on top of that to help you engage a little bit with the people that are not outside, like we have now with LinkedIn, where we put this kind of questions that we have and comments on the screen. So it's more towards, it's definitely not a live stream, because we're not a football match. So that's where I see the difference in terms of the live stream and the webcast. That is the best example. If I watch a Premier League or an NBA match, which are kind of, I don't really watch Premier League anymore, but at least NBA matches, I don't expect to have any connection to the players or anybody to hear me when I scream at the TV. And because that's the engagement bit that a lot of people didn't understand in pandemic, is regardless how hard you're going to scream at the TV, if you haven't prepared for your audience to get engaged, nobody's going to hear them. End of story.
Now, there obviously is a secondary channel in sports, which is going out to Twitter and seeing how bad, how mad everybody is about that foul or whatever. So that's my favorite thing to do, is to go out to Twitter and find out how mad everybody is at the same topic. So
yes, that's the second screen experience that we can talk about as well.
Yeah,
definitely.
That's a great. Yeah, I love that terminology as well.
Absolutely. And Robert actually pretty much asked this question about hybrid producing to in person and online at the same time. Seems to be very difficult. How do you ensure that online video audience feels included in a hybrid event, and what are the key benefits of hybrid? Brian, I think, do you already want to
you're going to
take this
toss
one
me this one, the question of the decade, right?
The holy grail.
So I mean, this is only the question of the decade.
Yes.
Timer starts now.
So I mean, I think hybrid, I think the biggest mistake people make in hybrid is not really getting clear that all the audience are different and unique, and you have to set up your structure so that you're addressing each scenario in its very unique state. So what you're sending out to the local screens is not adequate for what you're sending out to the broadcast or to the stream. What your MC in the room may not be the right MC for. You may need to have a layered event. So you may treat the hybrid or the remote audience in a much different manner. You may have their own MC. You may have special features for them that are only for that, designed only for that space. You know, one of my favorite things that I see conferences do is, okay, you got a keynote speaker and they go to the main stage. Instead of coming off to the green room and moving on, I see a lot of them coming off and getting interviewed on the web broadcast, and often fielding questions from the hybrid audience. Now the hybrid audience is actually getting a better experience. They're getting one-to-one conversation with that keynote speaker in another environment. And so I think that's one of the keys to this, is that you have to really get clear about each environment and give them what they need in that environment. And so not to just think it's one solution across the entire mess per se.
Oh no, it's very fascinating, because we've tried in the event industry a lot, especially during the stay-at-home period when we were naughty. Without naming the names, we've tried to copy past the experience from a live event to a live stream, and we a lot of the conversations were managing expectations from an organizer standpoint, because you can't mimic that. First of all, you cannot solve every interaction problem through AV, because we are on the AV subject specifically. So, but in the same time, if you think of, as you said, from a different perspective, they have to have a different experience depending where they are and how they are. It can be enhanced, but it can be enhanced on both ways, because if you're on site, you don't get the hallway interaction. You don't get the coffee afterwards. You don't get a handshake. You don't have the warmth there. Whereas online, I've got two screens now, and I can watch this show, and I can Google this. I can write an email. I can Google Brian, make sure that I know him. I connected with him with LinkedIn. I comment on posts, and there is a completely different conversation there.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've seen, people let's put a camera out in the hall and let them watch everybody network. I'm very interested in that remote. Yeah, I mean, talk about FOMO. It's like,
see what you're missing out on. And I think,
well, hopefully we've evolved since then. But
I really hope so. Yes.
Yeah, very true. And I think what you say, like every audience is different, and you need to tailor an experience where each audience finds themselves valued and have a tailored experience for them. But there are obviously also tools that can give some overlap, like Kristen mentioned, like tools like Slido that can have both audiences engage, which makes them feel part of a bigger community rather than just their hybrid or online or in-person experience. I think that's also a good addition. So thank you, Kristen, for mentioning
No,
interactive
but
tools like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
I
an
think
absolutely valid point.
no, yeah, I was thinking, that's one of the mistakes I see. Actually, I remember early on in one of an early event I did during the pandemic. It was like the first time we got together as a group, and everybody's in masks in the ballroom, 6 feet away, and we're zooming out, and I realized everybody in the room's not going to be on the same chat. And so how do you deal with that? And that's why you have to have a separate chat device often from the actual environment you're working in, unless, obviously things have evolved significantly since then, that many platforms you can chat whether you're in the stream or not. And I was reluctant to actually even say, I was like, there's no way I'm sharing the link to anybody in the room and having a bunch of people opening their Zooms in my meeting room. I was like, nope, do not share that code with anybody, because they are not getting in this meeting. But yeah, I think, how do you find the right tools that match both audiences? And you should have a little bit of that, but don't rely on it being the only solution for the entire event.
Absolutely. And like last time, we spoke a bit about small details. Another small but very important detail that we quickly
Yeah.
encountered when scheduling this particular event,
Oh
actually,
yeah.
um, is also take into account where those audiences are, especially if you have an hybrid event. You have an in-person event maybe taking place in America or in Europe, but you also have virtual audiences joining from a different continent. And it just so happens that not all continents change summertime at the same time.
Yeah.
It's something to take into account as well there.
No, and it was a discussion we had to have for our particular broadcast. The U.S. just moved our time on Sunday morning, and but the great news is you being the professional that you are, confirmed with me that we were on the same schedule. So, and I thought we have to talk about this today, because it goes on every day in this space.
Absolutely. It is such a small detail that can make such a big difference if you're an hour off for those 3 weeks. We're switching back the 31st of March. We're in Europe, we're a little bit behind, but for everyone joining in, just know that now there's an hour extra difference. Actually, it's a bit shorter at the moment, but we'll be catching up with you shortly for those joining from the US. I think, well, we kind of went through a lot of different elements in terms of especially how to optimize the hybrid event game with both the tools, with both strategies. In terms of like, let's go to the engagement techniques. I thought that was a good one. Like, what do you see as the essential role in terms of using AV technology to enhance the engagement in virtual settings, in hybrid settings, in-person settings? What do you think is the key element that AV brings that event professionals should really take in and take home with this session today?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think when you get in the audio video thing is, the closer you can get to a real time experience for somebody is important. And so, we all get to asynchronous network on a regular basis through our emails and through our direct messages on social media platforms. But, I think the idea of an event as being synchronous is still very attractive. Yes, we can do some asynchronous environments, and they do have their place, but I think when you can bring people together and have them communicate directly with each other, whether it be on camera, whether it be even a chat experience, our goal is to get that direct communication with another human, because if you look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need to be seen by other humans, and that's what events do, is we bring that human experience to the table. And so, the better your camera, the better your audio feed, the better your internet. All of those things make a difference.
Oh, guys, you hit the nail on the head there, because it's one of my favorite things is, so I come from slightly a different perspective, and I look at any content, visual content, be it video, be it photo, be it anything, as a behavioral trigger. And we have this discrepancy that you either have somebody that goes, okay, I'll do this 10,000 events a ticket on Zoom, which is not the case because it triggers a different behavior, versus I need a Netflix production for my workshop, which is bullshit. You don't. You need to have something correct, but you need to have it correct, because if the sound is bad or my internet
Yeah.
fails and you go, then the experience is bad. If it's correct, and again, going to like the hybrid element, we don't have any drama, sex, nudity, or anything on the stage. We are not Netflix. We have people speaking, so it has to be correct. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to have flying horses, dragons, or anything coming out of the stage. But if it's bad, you're going to have a bad experience, and you're going to feel it instantly.
Yeah, I think, you bring up a good point. And I think, hey, I brought up technology and cameras and things like that, but I think a more important piece of the equation for AV and technical people is to start to forecast all of the different scenarios. What kind of challenge am I going to have when I go to a corporate office and I set up a remote studio with the corporate bigwig to broadcast out? Have I checked in with their IT department, and can my particular, if I'm using Restream, maybe they got that blocked on their network. Have I gone and figured that out in advance? Have I seen that before? I'm broadcasting to a particular remote city factory. Do they have enough bandwidth in that particular factory to receive that feed? And so I think, what the AV role is that we are trying to troubleshoot all of the different scenarios of where people are and how they need to get in contact with the other direction and receive the information, and make sure that we've thought out all of those solutions before we bring people together. And so I think that's the more important role of the AV in this space.
100% agree with you. And I think you mentioned it actually before we started. Like, the best approach is to say, like, technology will fail at some point. We don't know what. So have a contingency plan in place to make sure that no matter what happens, you have covered your base, and you can say with 99% certainty that you have covered every single element. And an important part of that is also choosing the right companies to work with. And one of the kind of last segments, because we're flying through time, we're already past
Yeah,
the
you got
hour.
Bogdan's like, who is this guy anyway? He talks a lot.
Oh, no, man.
We love it. The last segment was kind of figuring out or choosing the right AV solutions, and how to assess them, how to future-proof your event. Do you need to go in-house or external? There are quite a few things to consider. What would you give as a tip to the audience listening right now in terms of choosing the right AV solution for their event to make sure they cover all their bases? Besides obviously going for prestige AV in this case, but
well, thank you,
in general,
Mariah. We accept your
my pleasure.
endorsement.
In general, how can people make that assessment?
No, I mean, I think, if I were to start anywhere, I would say that the key to success in any part of the event industry is having trusted partners. You have to build relationships for the long haul. You have to get to know each other. You understand the limits of your vendors or your partners. You have to understand the limits of your internal organizations. And so, and who you're working with needs to understand your limitations. So I think it starts with the human element. Once again, it's building strong relationships, foundations, ensuring that your partners have the technology you need. And then I think the next phase is testing. You don't want to start with a new platform and never have tested it. I think that's one of the things we saw during the pandemic is, we were forced to. We had to go and take this platform we've never used before. I recommend things like, if you're thinking about moving to a new platform for your annual meeting, but you have a small regional spring meeting, You might want to host it on that platform, work out the bugs. You're gonna have some issues. Like I didn't foresee this challenge, but now that you've done it on a smaller environment, you can solve those bugs before you bring more people together. And then the other thing is, I think it's important to just consider your audience. What are they used to? I used to laugh at this little scenario, which is I had a client come to me and they're like, I want to do a tweet wall, Brian. And I'm like, okay, great. Yeah. Have you used any software before? And they're like, no. I go, well, here's what I would suggest. I would use this particular software. And then I go, and what's your Twitter account? And they're like, we don't have a Twitter account. And I'm like, and it was like some old stodgy association. I can't even remember who it was, but I'm like, well, if you don't have a Twitter account and your members don't have Twitter accounts, you probably don't need a tweet wall. You might want to go a different route. So I think you got to get clear about who your members are, what their technologies are. And that leads me to the next thing is I think you have to train your attendees. You have to train them in the technologies you want to use. So similar to what I just said, on your spring meeting, you might use the software. If you're going to do a webinar, you might bring them into the software. Have lots of reasons to have them use the different technologies you're using. So when you are on the ultimate high stakes stage of your annual meeting, that you're not doing it for the first time and they're not doing it for the first time. And so I think it's all about just moving everybody forward to a higher level. And those would be my tips. Big picture is just building that relationship and improving everybody's skills along the way.
Couldn't agree more. Bogdan, you wanted to?
Oh no! I can go back and say that I probably, I don't know if I can beat you at talking, but I'll definitely have a good chance in terms of the amount of ranting I can do on this one.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go for it.
No, absolutely. One of my, I wanted to ask a question because I think we're trying to educate as much as possible, and we're trying to educate ourselves as well. And I've learned a lot from you. And one of my pet hates is the vague terminology that people use when they don't know what you're talking about. And as much as we work, everybody says, I work in events. So what do you do?
Yeah.
Do you do AV? And I'll get back to why AV is wrong. Where do you do weddings? Do you do broadcast? Do you do data? What do you do? AV again is a relatively general term, and I'm trying to form a question in my head, as in AV is not the magical wand for everything, but people think that when they go to AV, they would expect anything from building the stage to setting up the lights to designing the stage to doing the live stream to understanding everything, and on top of that to be a very experienced media and person and understand the engagement off site, on site, and in this maybe the cameraman can be the MEC as well. How do you work with various partners to enhance the specialization that you have within the AV environment?
And I think you can blame some AV companies, including us at times, for that. There was pre-pandemic this period where everybody was kind of like trying to take everything under their wing to be competitive. So it's like, I can do that. I can do that. Yes, I can do that. I think the pandemic exposed. Oh, by the way, I'm not allowed to use those words, right? I didn't. It took me the whole time to catch that I'm not allowed to use those words anymore. But no, I think we need to. I'm sorry, I lost my point there.
No worries. We're talking about the partners, and my idea came because you said about the partnership that you have with the end stakeholder.
I think. Well, if you go to the client side of things, the end client, I think it's your duty to get clear about the vendors you're bringing in, not just assume that AV means I'm also video production, I'm also stage design, I'm also graphic design. Prestige is a lot of those things, by the way. Toss that out there. But you want to find out what somebody's good at and make sure that you contract them in their sweet spot. And that may mean bringing in, a lot of times we have a great lighting division, but we do a lot of events where somebody brings in another lighting company, and we're fine with that. That if that company can provide a better outcome in that space, that's great. We do a lot of events where somebody's creating all the graphics, creating all the video and media assets. They're designing the script. If that is their expertise and they understand the client better in that space, I think you should do that. But you as a client have to be a strong understanding of all the different parties and make sure that you can bring them together in a way that makes sense. I do see I've seen some pretty good growth in the agency space in the past couple of years. I think agencies have found a new space in the sense that they've been able to be a nice executive producer of an event and say, I know Prestige is really good in the equipment space and this space. I know this lighting company. I know this video production company that can bring all these assets together. So, I think the key is that you get clear about all the different partners and make sure that they can actually deliver at the level you need them to.
Love it.
I'll be honest, we don't do platforms. I would prefer somebody bring the platform with them. We're great at patching into a hybrid platform. I can get the content in and out. I can give you a strong, solid signals everywhere, but I'm not going to design platforms anymore. We've decided that's not our space,
No, it's just fair enough.
Yeah.
That was the instinct at some point, and it's still kind of the instinct when you talk about, especially like the big players like Cvent, the all-in-one concept of you can be all-in-one because there are so many elements when you're talking about a hybrid event. Cvent cannot build stages. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
They might be good at something, but they're definitely not good at building stages. If you go across the board from that perspective.
Yeah, and I think that one of the benefits, I believe, of the labor shortages and things of that nature is that companies don't have the luxury to do what's not in their wheelhouse. And so I've seen a lot of companies pull back services that are not ideal for them. In our space, we used to do some installs and, do permanent installation in boardrooms, small stuff. But we just flat out say we don't do that anymore. It's not anything I can support. I want to stay focused on live events. We don't do much social anymore. I do a few weddings within some of the venues we serve, but we're not going to take just random business off the street doing weddings. And so, how do you get clear about your services? And I think that's important too for all those service providers out there. It is good to have a niche and be focused on that and be the expert at it.
Absolutely. And I think with that, it's also a kind of side note for everyone who's talking to anyone who says they can do everything you can possibly imagine. Red flag right there.
Yeah. Challenge that. And we can challenge the time as well, talking about red flags. If you do have any questions, please pop them in now, because we'll try to, I underline trying to wrap up somehow towards the 45-minute mark. But if you do have any questions, and thank you for the ones that you've already posted. I don't see all of them because I'm in London and I have a bad internet. So that's why I work perfectly with Moran, because he has a good internet where he is and he can see the questions.
Well, Moran's got the virtual hook. He can just get rid of me anytime you guys are finished. So.
No, I think we all enjoyed it. I see we have still a lot of people that hang in there. So appreciate you all for making it to the 45-minute mark at this point. I want to do two things. So indeed, if you have any questions, pop them in the chat. We will have 2 minutes and then we have wrapped up. So be quick, but you can also just leave them there, because Brian will have the possibility to go back to the event, read your comment to you individually, maybe connect. So will Bogdan and I. So if you have any questions and it takes you longer than those 2 minutes to type, just drop them anyway, or connect with either one of us. We'll be happy to help you out. Brian, I wanted to give you one last question.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Besides all the invaluable knowledge you've already shared today, what would you like to give those listening as a takeaway from this session? That hammer that down 100%.
Oh boy, going all the way down.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think if I were to make one point in the industry, and I think if you're listening today, you're already on the right track, which is, we no longer have the luxury as event professionals to be technical noobs or newbies per se. It's no longer optional to be average in technology and events. Maybe 20 years ago, it was better to know what wine paired with red meat or fish. But that is no longer the differentiation piece. And so if you want to have a long, solid career in events, you're going to want to become a technology expert. And so that's my recommendation: is stay in tune with people like Mariah, Bogdan. Continue to learn, continue to evolve your skills, and support that outcome.
I think that's
Thank
a
you for that.
powerful takeaway, and we are very much aligned with that statement.
Mhm.
And it's good to know that you're not alone. There's a lot of people, company, individuals, including ourselves, that are more than happy to help you out with that tech, so you can actually focus on organizing the best possible event. I haven't seen any new questions coming in, so I'd say let's quickly wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us today, Brian. It has been a pleasure, not just that we laughed a lot and we had a good time, but also there was a lot of insights for the industry, for those that are listening, that they can definitely take home and improve their events with. So thank you very much for that. For those of you who would like to get in touch with Brian, you can obviously see him as a speaker here, but you can also go to linkedin.com/in/Brian Monahan. That is MONO
A MONAHN.
A
Let me put the
AHN.
You'll
Yes,
find me.
exactly.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
We'll
actually,
put
I
it in the
didn't
chat.
catch my. I'm not going to acknowledge anything right
Monahan.
now.
yeah.
All right. We'll put it in the chat for you to follow Brian. We'll also
There's an
put it in
Easter
the
egg
show
in this
notes.
episode.
Yeah.
Yes, if you can figure it out, let us know in the comments. We will actually also put them in the show notes. So if you're listening to the podcast, you'll find them in the description, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can find it there as well. Um, he covers a variety of topics, not just live event tips and AV insights and valuable knowledge, but he's also known as the person to go to when you ever feel the need to write a book,
Oh,
no matter what the topic is. But if you want to get started and get started quick and get that book out there, Brian is the one to go to. So make sure you take that mental note as well, because he has a passion for writing and authorship, and he is a gem in that. So make sure to also
thanks,
contact
Brian.
him for that. I think, yeah, we've gone through a lot. The time has flown by, so we can wrap it up. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Kristen, for being here. Thank you, Salima, for being here. I think we still have quite a few other people, but for those of you who are watching, thank you so much. And we're looking forward to the next one, which, before I forget,
Ooh. Yeah.
we have another guest, and that is actually going to be Claire Forestier. We will
Oh,
dive into the sweet spot
love
balancing
Claire.
emotion, engagement, and technology. So another interesting topic.
You got
We
to
hope
invite
to
me
see
on.
you.
You got to let me in on that show. I love Claire. She is awesome.
Oh, Claire is absolutely fantastic. So it's undoubtedly.
Make
I
sure
will
to
be
join
there.
us next week. Brian, we would love to see you in the comments. And yeah, with that, thank you all so much for being here, and looking forward to the next one.
Thank you all. See you next week.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Brian, very much. Been a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Happy days.